Throughout this campaign so far, obviously, I've had a very, very big focus on what has essentially been the complete and absolutely falling apart of the Conservative Party. That's what has interested me and fascinated me, the most out of all of this. And of course, again, I know I said that I would follow, do something about the Labour manifesto and etc. But unfortunately, I just haven't had the chance to do so. Um, you know, life, as you say, is going on in the background. Um, but no, you know, I am sort of very hopeful and optimistic. I did a video about how hopeful I was and optimistic, I know. Um, but honestly, what I want to do a video today, I want to talk about some of the stuff that the Lib Dems have been up to, particularly, of course, Ed Davey, because we've only done one video about Ed Davey, and that was, of course, how Ed Davey really, really seemed to be using this entire campaign, at least at that point, and certainly throughout all of this, has really been sort of the revenge of the Lib Dems. It's difficult to you've got to understand where the Lib Dems sort of came from and their recent history of they went into coalition, with the Conservatives. And I can't really speak for any sort of party insiders, but I would not be surprised if there were a lot of Lib Dem activists and people in the Lib Dem party saying, should we really be going into coalition with these guys? Is this going to be good for us? Unfortunately, as well, time proved, going into coalition with the Conservatives was a really bad idea. The Conservatives blamed the Lib Dems for everything that had gone wrong, anything like that. Oh, well, because we don't have a majority, clearly it's the Lib Dems' fault. We also heard the stories about how they were treated, of course, in the Conservative coalition government. The fact that meetings were started at 9 and finished at 9:30, and then the Lib Dems would leave, and then the real cabinet meeting would begin. All these things that we've seen and we're sort of told that we've heard throughout the years how they were sort of acted and sort of treated in that coalition by the Conservatives. So make no mistake, there is, I think a lot of people in the Lib Dem party really, really going for it in this election because they certainly view this not only as a potential revenge moment for them, ousting, um, in some cases, probably some quite senior top level conservatives. Don't get me wrong. I think the big um shall we say scalps, shall we say, on general election night, I think the Lib Dems are gonna claim quite a few. I think the Lib Dems are absolutely gonna claim quite a few moments. Certainly, of course, Rees-Mogg is on their hit list, um, very, very likely to be one of the candidates that a Lib Dem potentially can take out. Um, and, there's a couple of others, as well, but they're not going to sort of talk about that today. Um, I want to talk about more about Ed Davey's campaign, why he has been doing these, all these stunts, what's the strategy behind it, and of course, some of the carefulness I think they have to take going forward. So before we start talking about that, please do remember to click on the like, the share button, and of course down below the Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course the Patreon page down below as well. So let's crack on into talking about this then, shall we? So that's where not the Conservatives, the Lib Dems came from. And I described the Lib Dem party a couple of years ago now as almost being the ghost party, that they were a party that was sort of just there. They were just there. And especially under Tim Farron, they just seemed to be almost non-existent. They were the ghost in the attic party, I think I once described them as. You would occasionally hear the chains rattle in the attic. But other than that, you didn't really hear from them. And especially that we've seen subsequent elections prior to this one, they didn't really, you know, make a splash. Ha ha ha. But Ed Davey, on the other hand, has. And each of these crazy, stunts has had a reason, has had a purpose behind it. When he's been going out doing these water sports stuff that you've seen, and when he's been doing, the paddle boarding, recently he did, I don't know what they call it. It's like there's like a wing, and they sort of all hold on while the speedboat drags them along. That in particular has all been to highlight the environmental concerns that a lot of people have living, or at least in these constituencies where they have these rivers, where they are sort of a part of people's lives, and then they see the river all the time, and they've seen the active pollution that has gotten worse, of a conservative government that knows it's gotten worse and seem to have done nothing about it. And Ed Davey's been highlighting that, really sort of hammering that home. Recently, he did another one. I can't remember what they call it, but it's like exercise in the pool. I can't remember what they call it. I know it's got a specific name, and that's going to annoy me for the rest of the video now. But he's there. And why was he there? Why did that film? What was the Lib Dem message? Well, the Lib Dem message from that was, hey, look at this, council-run facility of where you've got a pool, all the community coming together to do sort of, exercise. It's a community and public good. These places are community and public good, and we as Lib Dems believe in these types of things, and believe that these things should be more properly funded and sort of looked after. And that was the whole message behind all that stunt. Yes, it's funny him, splashing water everywhere and getting splashed by this old woman back, but it had a message. It had a serious message behind it. Just as the the bungee jump, if you saw that, the message all behind that, if you looked into it, if you've gone into sort of seeing the press release, the video, the follow-up thing after it, was all about, take the plunge with the Lib Dems and, let us, show you how good your constituency could be with us. Again, all these stunts have messages and stuff behind them. So they've all really been perfectly planned and perfectly timed on this, even though it may seem like Ed Davey has been almost using this campaign to have, a campaign, an adventure holiday in many ways. But it's all been seriously and targeted, and it's gotten the message out. It's gotten the Lib Dems media attention. But there is a flip side to this, and this is the flip side that Ed Davey and the Lib Dems are going to have to be very careful of. A lot of these stunts, even though they have had serious messaging behind them, they now have to be careful that Ed Davey doesn't get seen as a non-serious politician. Because if he gets seen like that, that could very well be a death knell for any potential future campaign. And if the Lib Dems are, serious about wanting to take power or anything like that, he will have to be seen as a serious, prime minister. So as good and as messages all these stunts have had behind them, there is a bit of cautionality that his team are going to have to take. So we will see what happens after the election. Will the Lib Dems keep up this type of, attention grabbing and an even sort of message focused type of publicity stunts? Will they keep this up? I hope they do, because it has been, I think, a very, very good way for them to campaign and bring attention to some of these areas where they have been doing this stuff. Because for everything you've seen in the the national press of Ed Davey, falling off a paddleboard, etc. Look at the local papers. The local papers have had Ed Davey falling off a paddleboard, but meanwhile they've carried that strong message from Ed Davey, from the Lib Dems, of look at how polluted your river has been. Under the Lib Dems, we want to make these this pollution less. We want to solve this problem where your Conservative MP has done nothing about it. So, very, very important, I think, messaging. And we'll see what happens after this, because Ed Davey cannot continue to have, an adventure holiday like he has now. And I think you should see the campaign maybe morph after that. We'll see what happens after the general election and how the Lib Dems going on. But if they go back to what they were, like this ghost, almost non-existent party, that will be bad for them. Because just as Labour is now in power and they've got to show they can deliver, if, and again, it's a big if, it's not impossible, but it could happen, if the Lib Dems become the main party of opposition, they too will have to show that they can perform and potentially maybe even form a government and that they can be taken seriously. So that's obviously all in the future, but again, let me know what you think. I'd be very interested to know what you thought of Ed Davey's stunts. Have you followed through on the messaging to see what they've seen, or have you just seen Ed Davey, acting foolish? Let me know what you think down below. But of course, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, we'll see you all next time.